A hunter of the skies is totally disguised. Here's your look at the Hiya Toys Exquisite Mini Predator's Invisible Falconer. Exquisite Mini is a new standard setting series for 1/18th scale, featuring super articulation action figures under Hiya Toys. Before starting the review for the Invisible Falconer Predator, I'm sure you guys will need some necessary 411. I'm happy to oblige. We're going to bring in my trusty tape measure, and we're going to measure off to the very top of the Invisible Falconer Predator. I'm going to make sure that while I'm doing that, I'm not going to accidentally hit the side of his arm, because that's going to give us a figure that's about half the height, and that would be absolutely wrong. I'm going to stop it right there. If then looking at the screen correctly, you're looking at the Invisible Falconer Predator standing 5.9 inches in height. That's pretty tall. Switching that, though, over to centimeters, you're then looking at the Exquisite Mini of Invisible Falconer standing 15 centimeters exactly. Got a couple of other Predator Exquisite Mini figures we can bring in for some size comparisons. Here he is next to the Crucified Predator, unarmored version, and here he is next to the armored version of that same said figure. Now you can see, it looks like Falconer is just a hair taller, a half a Predator head taller than the other two figures on either side of him. Unfortunately for Falconer, invisible or otherwise, the figure doesn't include its drone. Kind of would have been nice if he included his drone, but he does come with other things. Let's have a look at those right now. We'll start first where we always seem to start, and that's with this display stand. The same muddy terrain. I know by now you guys are probably so sick of seeing these, but you know what? Take some time, appreciate the amount of detail and care that Hiya Toys put in these display stands. Yes, while the stands are the same, we can bring in another stand so you can see there's nothing really different at all. Paint varies just ever so slightly, but I would imagine that they're probably painted by hand, so you're not going to be getting the same snowflakes on either side. You can attach the two stands together. All you need is eye brackets, which just so happen to come included with these figures. I'm going to do this quickly because I know I spend so much time always talking about these. You get these eye brackets that fit basically into these little slotted grooves. And then from there, deciding which way you want to have it, you can attach the two display stands together, 3 display stands together, 4 display stands. Well, you get the idea. And you can attach it this way. You can attach it this way. You can pretty much attach it any different direction that you want. So those are nice. I always like that they include these. You know, the Predators Exquisite Mini, the Predators with the S on the end of it based on the movie, don't have really any difficulty standing. Some of the smaller build Predators tend to be a little bit more difficult standing and keeping upright, but I don't have that problem at all actually with this build. These figures are going to be a little bit bigger than your regular Predators. Actually, you know what? We can move this one over just to do a quick comparison. I just happen to have one of these Predators on hand, on the ready. I don't know if this is Wild Boar. I'm trying to draw on a bit of a blank as to which one this is, but this one actually does have a little bit more difficulty standing, as you can see. A lot of it could be chalked up to the way that they've pegged the feet and the fact that the feet are a little bit on the smaller side. These figures always usually have to use display stands, so if you get figures like this build, generally you will want to use display stands. The Predators with S on the end of it, you're usually okay. They seem to stand okay. I mean, in fact, like even the armored Crucified and regular Crucified Predators, those figures also stand quite good because they've got larger feet, larger builds, and overall the figures feel a little bit more stable. Let's have a look at the other accessories that come included with Falconer. You get yourself a Yaucha skull. How interesting is that? It's all done in clear plastic here, so it really doesn't have any paint or anything on top of it. But despite the fact it lacks something in paint, it more than makes up for it in the sculpting. Very, very nice. I would imagine by the fact that the mandibles are out like this and the mouth is open, that the Predator probably died painfully. That's just my guess, at least. You can see the top crowning of the skull. Very nicely detailed. This is a nice little accompanying piece to come along with the Predator. It's made of softer plastic, at least in the mandible area. Not so much on the back. The back is more of a durable plastic. And put that to the side. And then, of course, you get some swappable hands. The thing about these hands, not only are they very susceptible to being lost, but the fact that they're also closed hands like this, they seem a lot smaller than the regular hands that come in the sockets. Let me just show you the difference between the two. If you really think of the fact that the fingers have to be folded in like this and the thumb to make the fist, then you could say it is the same sized hand, but it just sort of, while looking at it, the swappable hand seems so tiny in comparison to the ones that are more dynamic, the ones currently sitting in the forearms. I'll put that to the side. Okay, so let's get a closer look at Falconer Predator, the invisible version of Falconer Predator. There are things I like certainly about the figure. There's other things not so much. It is making use of certainly a translucent clear plastic, but you can see that the colors vary quite a bit. Things like his arms, for example, and things like his lower legs be more closer to a clear color, but then when you get to the middle body area, a lot of it maybe could have something to do with the fact that you can see all the inner workings of the figure, but it tends to then make the middle body more yellow in color. His head, which I'm hoping then you're able to see, we'll see it from the side and have the light, there we go, studio light hitting on that perfectly. The head is definitely a lot more whiter than the rest of the body. In fact, when you see it from the side like this, you can see that the way that the pegs have plugged the head into the rest of the body. I think most of the problem, the culprit behind all this, is the fact that they're using translucent plastic, or they're using opaque plastic, I should say, on the pegs, that it sort of is off-coloring the rest of the body. I think if you were to really kind of look at it, it's sort of like that yellow and blue dress, or is it the gold and blue dress? What color are you actually seeing? I think you would really be seeing more of a clear plastic, but the pegs are the thing that are throwing and distorting the color off for the rest of the body. Despite its see-through nature, it does have decent detailing going for it. The texture work, as you can see, just on the body alone, and we spin it around so you can see it certainly on the back as well. Things like dreadlocks are still sculpted nicely. They're softer plastic too. So if you were worried that these would be things that would be breaking because they're just little slender strands of plastic, you don't have to worry as much. At least they're using like a softer plastic to get the job done. Falconer Predator, I think, was my favorite of the Predator designs, from Predators, the plural. I really like the helmet of it. It's a little harder, again, to see it because it's translucent, but it still has the same detailing as we saw with the fully materialized version of the Falconer Predator. Nice looking design going on there. It does have the shoulder strap here to the side, and this is actually a separate piece of plastic. It's thinner in nature as well, so looking at it, I'm a little more worrisome when it comes to the upper torso ball joint. We'll talk more about that in a second, but you can kind of see as I'm moving the ball joint around how it starts pinching these little straps right onto the side. I'm hoping that that's not going to do too much damage. Again, you really don't want to very roughly rotate the figure when it comes to figure's articulation, which I know we're kind of getting into already, but we'll talk more about the articulation of the figure in a second. One last thing we can certainly address when it comes to the figure is that he's got the one singular gauntlet blade, and it's not as soft as the dreads on the back here. The dreads are a much more softer plastic. You can see the way I'm bending him like this. The blade is a little bit more of a denser plastic. It still has a give to it, but I think if anything would be breaking on the figure, it probably would be this. And as you can see, it's also a separate piece from the rest of the figure. It just attaches onto the forearm. Okay, so let's have a look at the figure's posability. So the Falconer, its head rotates technically all the way around. It does get a little hung up, especially when it gets going against the shoulder piece here. You would be able to normally move the head up, down, back and forth, and rotate it all the way around. But like I said, as you're rotating it, it really gets caught on the shoulders on the side of the armor, like this piece right here. The upper torso is on a ball joint. The lower torso is on a ball joint. There is some places, sometimes, when if you move the torso too far back like this, you can see there's the gap in between, where clearly the two parts of the figure's body were put together. It's unavoidable, really, because if you're going to be getting this much articulation with a smaller scale figure, really any scale figure, then yes, things like gaps will certainly develop when it comes to rotating the figure's body. The arms do hinge out. And again, you're using opaque plastic. So if you're somebody that is worried that this is going to break, clear plastic is always a culprit for breakage. I don't think there's going to be as much worry here because they're using opaque plastic for the joints. And you can see straight through it right there. Like I said, the arms rotate back and forth. You can hinge them out. It has a bend in the elbow. You can rotate the forearm as well, and you can also rotate the hands. I know we already talked about the ball joint, so we'll just talk about that quickly on the torso, 1 and 2. Ball joint 1, ball joint 2. Then when we get to the legs split out. You can go forward and back on the legs. Something else, though, that you will want to be careful of, and I'm pointing frantically to this section right here, is when you're moving the legs forward and back, this part right here, the front, what you would call it, I guess, the knee guard, leg guard, is an extra piece that goes over top of the body, but it's connected by one strand, or actually technically two strands, but two strands attaching this part to this part right here. So when you are moving the leg forward and back, I haven't yet done this, developed this at least, but there will likely be stress marks. You will want to be careful. Don't move these too much, especially forward and back, because I think you're gonna split the plastic right there. He has a hinge on the knee, double hinge actually. Legs, I've noticed a little on the loose side, a little loose on both the figure's legs. And I don't know if that's just by the fact that they've used this molding a couple of times already. A little loose, just a little loose for my liking. He does have articulation in the feet, but as you can see, the foot is attached as one piece. There's no hinge happening right here. This may also contribute to the fact that the figures have better stability than the smaller framed Predator figures, but it does limit all the posability you normally would expect to find here. It still has the peg holes, granted, on the undersides of his feet, so you can still attach it to a display stand. But, again, when it comes to these larger sized Predator figures, short of the loose legs, which wouldn't be, I'm sure, across the board, the Predators stand fine. I don't have any real issues with them standing. It's a nice looking Falconer Predator. A little off in coloring just because I'm sure the way it was constructed. It's a little clearer in some areas than others. In others, it looks a little bit more yellow, especially in its torso. But I always really like see-through Predators, cloaked Predators. And I already like the design of Falconer, so when you put the two together, you get a nice looking figure to be putting on display. Still a shame, though, that the invisible Falconer didn't come included with his drone, and I'm trying to think whether Hiya have actually released an Exquisite mini of the drone. I know we did get the Predator dogs paired in twos to go along with the Tracker Predator, but I think up to this point, the Falconer has still been left out of the mix when it comes to his additional drone. Maybe that could be something that they could release down the road, and I guess they would have to release it as maybe part of an accessory set, because they probably can't just release a Falconer drone just by itself. If at some point they do release the drone, then finally we can have it displayed along with the Falconer, whether you get the regular, fully materialized, colored version of the Falconer, or you go with this one, the invisible Falconer. Now, of course, things that across the board, and it's not just the Falconer, but clear figures as a whole. Generally, there will be things that are a little bit more plaguing on these figures than your regular batch of Exquisite minis. Primarily the fact that you can see all the joints, and that sort of off-colors the body of the figure. His head is really more of a white, clear color, as well as his legs and his forearms. And then you've got more of that stark yellow coloring happening like in the middle torso. It was one of those unavoidable cases just by the way the figure is constructed and has all those additional articulation points happening. The figures are superposable. Unfortunately, like my Falconer here was a little loose on the lower legs, but other than that, he looks really great on display. Just in case you are curious, though, Hiya Toys are also releasing invisible versions of both Tracker and Berserker. So if you are looking to pick up this one for yourself and you're not really sure, well, would they release all three? They are. They're releasing all three, and we will actually be looking at all three in upcoming reviews as we look at both the invisible Tracker and the invisible Berserker. A big thank you again to the folks over at Hiya Toys that provided the sample of the Exquisite Mini Predator's invisible Falconer that we could have a look at in this review. If you guys are new to this channel, enjoying all the content you're seeing, be sure to then hit that subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and making sure you're keeping your peepers peeled, because we will in fact be looking at more Exquisite Mini Predators in the not so distant future. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.